Hi, I'm Ashley and welcome back to my channel and to the start of another reading vlog. So today's reading vlog is a special one because it's my Summerween reading vlog. And in case you don't know, Summerween is a readathon that is held every July. It goes for about a week and it's hosted by Gabby Reads. And I participated for the first time last year and I had a lot of fun and I'm super excited to do it again this year. The only downside to me doing it this year is last year I was able to take off some time from work, but this year I wasn't able to, but I'm just gonna make it work the best I can. And so today is July 2nd when I'm filming this, and the actual readathon doesn't officially start until July 5th on Saturday, and it goes till the 12th. But since I have less time to read and film for it this year because I have to work more, I decided I was just gonna start it today because I'm off today from work, so why not? And so essentially this readathon is celebrating Halloween in July. So it's kind of like Christmas in July, but instead of Christmas, it's Halloween. So it's just all about channeling Halloween and fall vibes in summertime, which I could really use right now because summer is just not my favorite. I just really don't like the heat, and we've been starting to get that really hot weather where I live, and I don't like it. And there are prompts for this readathon, so I kind of chose my TBR based on those prompts. So let me share my TBR with you, and I'll also go through the prompts. So prompt number 1 is read a book in the dark or at night, and this one I can pretty much read anything, so any of these books I have will work. And I'm excited for this one because I actually just recently bought a book light, which I've never had one before, so I'm excited to be able to use that for this prompt. And then prompt number 2 is read a horror or thriller book. So I have 2 YA fantasy novels on my TBR for this, and either of those will work because they're fantasy, but they also have horror elements in them, so I'm counting them for this because I'm actually not a straight up horror reader. I don't like straight up horror. I like my fantasy with some horror, but not straight up horror. So one of the YA fantasy books that has horror in it that's on my TBR is The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. And this was actually on my TBR for last fall because this came out last September. And it was actually one of my most anticipated reads of last year. But time just got away from me and I never got around to it. And also I ended up reading a bunch of other gothic fantasy books last fall, and by the time I finished those it was November and I was kind of not in the mood anymore, so I didn't want to pick this one up when I wasn't in the mood for it, but I am totally in the mood now, so I'm really excited to read this one. So this one is a retelling of the grim fairy tale Godfather Death, which I've never read before, but I have not yet read an Erin Craig book that has disappointed me, so I have high hopes for this one. And then prompt number 3 is read a book with a sky on the cover, and so my other YA fantasy book works for this prompt. So my other one that also has horror vibes is 11 Houses by Colleen Oakes, and this one came out last year and it has been on my radar ever since. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of the description of this one to give you an idea what it's about. So it says, Mabel is one of the last surviving members of House Beverly, one of the 11 houses on the haunted island of Weymouth. Her days, like those of all the other teens on the island, are spent readying her house for the storm, a once-a-decade event that pummels the island with hurricane-level wind, water, and waves. But that's not all the storm brings with it, because Weymouth Island is a gate between the worlds of the living and the dead. So that sounds so exciting. This one I've heard pitched as Twilight meets The Mist, so that's a very interesting comparison. So I'm really excited for this one. And then prompt number 4 is read a book you've owned for more than a year. This is a one prompt I had trouble with because this is a library book, so this one won't work. And then this one I got last September, so I haven't had it for quite a year yet. But then I realized I owned this book. My Roommate is a Vampire, and I got this one right when it came out, and it's been over a year since then. Yeah, this came out in 2023, so it has been almost 2 years that I've owned this and haven't read it. So this will work for that prompt. I just don't know if I'll have time to get to it, but if I do end up having time, I will read this. If not, then it just wasn't meant to be. And then the last prompt is read a novella, manga, or listen to a spooky audiobook. So for this one, I might listen to some of the 13th Child on audiobook, so that would work, but also I have a manga. So I have D. Grayman here. This is actually volumes 1, 2, and 3 in one. And D. Grayman is one of my favorite anime series of like all time. I loved that series as a teenager. And I recently read Cruel as the Light, and there's Exorcists in that one, and there's Exorcists in this one. And so reading that made me really want to like either read the manga of this again or watch the anime again. So I decided I would read some of the manga. So those are all the prompts, and that's my TBR for Summerween. But also I wanted to mention that there's also a Summerween bingo. So there is a bingo card for Summerween. So I thought it would be fun to try to get bingo on this bingo card, or just like to do as many as I can. So one of the squares is read a book in the dark, which should be easily accomplished because that's also a prompt. Second one is watch a scary movie. Now I'm not a scary movie person, but I do like scary anime, which seems contradictory, but so I do have an anime film in mind that I might watch if I have time. And then another one is read a book with 6 words in the title. That one I don't think is gonna work because none of the books I plan to read have 6 words in the title, but that's fine. And then we have read a book that takes place in the desert. Again, I don't think any of my books take place in the desert. And then read a thriller or horror book. That one will easily be accomplished because that's also a prompt, and I'm reading 2 fantasy books with horror in them. Bake a fall-inspired treat. That I can definitely do. I love to bake, and I was planning to bake something fall-related anyways. Listen to a Halloween playlist. That can be accomplished. Read a book outside. I do have an idea for that. We'll see if I go through with it. And read a book with a night sky on the cover. Which this one, 11 Houses, will accomplish that because it's a night sky. So yeah, that is the bingo card. So I think the first book I'm going to start with is going to be 11 Houses. And I'll probably check back in again on Friday once the readathon officially starts and once I have some thoughts on this. So before I start this, I want to read what's on the back of this, because on the back there's like a creepy little poem. And it's very intriguing, so I want to share it. So it says, when the sea begins to scream, close the shutters. When the wind starts to rush, lock thy doors. Reckon your gaze on the death-set shore. Fares well the house that's ready. Watch the water, watch the trees. Check rations, bend your knee. When mist is on the rise, say a prayer. Fares well the house that's ready. Also, I want to read this little blurb on the inside flap. So it says, on a forgotten part of Nova Scotia, there lies an island. On that island are 11 houses. In those houses sit 11 ancient families, and they are waiting. And then, within the first, few pages of the book, you get, the 11 houses depicted here. And it seems that, each house has, a certain quality with them. For example, the first house is Cabot, and they are first house to the sea, control and power, descendants of the people of iron. The house our main character is from, Beverly, is last house to sea, secretive and winsome, descendants of the people of salt. The first line of this book is so intriguing. I'm going to read it. It says, the dead that wait underneath the sea are unusually loud today. What? What does that even mean? So, on this island, so our story takes place on an island, and apparently there's never any, newcomers that come to the island, they're kind of not allowed, and if, a curious tourist does go onto their island, there's kind of, a spell on the island that will make them feel like they need to leave right away, but now there is a new person, a new boy in their class at school. And it says, there has never been a new young person in town, and certainly not a new boy our age. And our main character, Mabel, it's her friend Nora that tells her this, and she tells Mabel that the boy is her type, and Mabel is like, what does that mean, Nora, my type? And Mabel says, for one, he looks kind of grumpy. 2, he seems sarcastic and edgy. And 3, and most importantly, he's not from here. And that just made me laugh, and also, I'm seeing the Twilight vibes already. And then Nora says to Mabel, you should see the new boy's hair in his backpack. I'm curious, what about his hair and backpack? And Mabel's response is, fine, but I'm not running down there Like some deranged fan, you embarrassed yourself galloping over here. Boys, even when they're new, aren't all that grand. They break your heart and make you watch them play video games. Okay, I just have to say, we're meeting Miles, and he used to live in Seattle. Just saying, Seattle. Twilight. Okay, I'm going back to reading. Hi, so it's now Friday, July 4th, so it's still one day before the Summerween readathon officially begins, but I wanted to give an update tonight because I have made much progress in this book. So I have made it to chapter 19, page 191, and I am really just flying through this book. And at the start of yesterday, I was like only on page 20 something, and then by the end of the day, I was on page 180. I also had work yesterday, and I don't usually read that much on a work day, but I just couldn't put this book down yesterday. So first, let me tell you a little bit about what this is about, and then I'll talk about my thoughts so far. So this book takes place on an island in Nova Scotia called Weymouth Island, and this island is isolated from the rest of the world. And on this island there are 11 houses, there are 11 families that live on this island, and really other than them, no like new people come to the island unless someone is marrying into one of the families, and even not many visitors come to the island. Because the island itself is like a character, it's magical and kind of alive. If a stranger comes to the island, as soon as they get on the island, they feel an impulse to leave the island. And if you live on the island and you leave the island, as soon as you leave the island, you pretty much forget about the secrets of the island. And so this island is pretty much the gate between the living and the dead. And every 8 to 12 years, there is a big storm on the island. And so with this storm comes rain and wind, but also the dead rise from the sea. And most of the time, the dead are trapped in the sea, but when the storm comes, they rise up to the sea, and their goal is to try to get to the bridge that leads from the island to the mainland. And so it's the duty of the 11 families that live on the island to stop the dead from reaching the mainland. So the island is set up in a way that the dead goes through each of the houses of the 11 families, and so at each house the family tries to thin out the number of dead and delay their progress. And once dawn comes, the storm will go away and the dead will go back to being trapped in the sea, so the 11 families just have to hold out until dawn. So our main character of the story is 17-year-old Mabel, and she is a member of one of the houses. And so she has spent all her life like learning about the storm and preparing for the storm, and she actually has already lived through one storm, and that one storm traumatized her, and her family has never been the same since. So during that storm, her father ended up dying, and Mabel and her younger sister witnessed it, and now since then her younger sister has had really bad anxiety and trauma from that, and she just cannot leave their house. And Mabel's mother now, because of that event, spends all her days just drinking. And so Mabel, along with their house guardian Jeff, are the two that kind of just hold the family together. So at the beginning of the book, Mabel goes off to the small island school as usual. But when she gets there, she learns that there is a new boy. And this is a big thing because new people like never come to the islands, and especially people her age. And it turns out that the new boy is Miles, and he's a member of the Cabot house, and he is the nephew of the head of that house. And his mother was Grace, who grew up on the island, but she ended up leaving the island, which doesn't usually happen. But she has passed away, and so now Miles has been taken in by his uncle. Miles and Mabel are drawn to each other, and they end up hanging out and getting to know each other. But along with the arrival of Miles coming to the island, strange things start to happen on the island as well. And Mabel believes that it's connected to Miles, but that it's also connected to her as well. And so our story goes from there. And so now for my thoughts. So this book, so far this book has just like been so bingeable. I think it's like the mystery and the spookiness of this book just keep me like flipping the pages because I want to know what is going on and what is happening on this island. And there seems to be like something about this next storm that's coming that might be different from all the other storms that they have weathered so far. And it also seems like the rulers of the island, the people that are in control, may be keeping some secrets. And so like all that is just keeping me flipping the pages. And I will say that this book, it does take place at the beginning of summer, so it's perfect for like this time of year. And also along with that, this book has spooky gothic vibes that make it perfect for Summerween. One of the things that I'm finding the most interesting so far about this book is definitely the world building, especially just learning about the dead. So the dead in this book, they hate salt, and because of that, Mabel's family has like a whole closet full of salt. And they also have like salt guns that they prepare for the storm and the dead rising. And then in addition to that, another thing I found really interesting is apparently the dead hate paper. And so in this book, you just like see people like stuffing scraps of paper places like into the floorboards, tied to their house gates. In Nora's family, they have thousands of paper cranes that are tied to the ceiling of their porch. And so I just thought that was like a really cool and unique detail so far that's like different from anything else that I've read before. And another really interesting thing is that the paper cranes that are tied to the rafters of Nora's porch, they are papers that are filled with Bronte quotes. And Mabel remarks how the dead especially hate paper with penned Bronte quotes, and Miles, who is a new boy who has come to the island, says, "Is it because Wuthering Heights is insufferable?" And that just made me chuckle. And that's the other thing that I'm enjoying about this book, is it does have like Twilight vibes. I know that I mentioned earlier in this video that this book was described as Twilight meets The Mist, and those Twilight vibes are definitely there, and that's one instance because in Twilight, Bella is always reading Wuthering Heights. Also, just like how Miles and Mabel meet also reminds me of how Edward and Bella met in Twilight, but in this book it's kind of reversed. So in Twilight, you had Bella, who was a main character, moving to a new town and meeting the mysterious Cullens. But in this book, our main character, Mabel, she has lived on this island her entire life surrounded by this strangeness. And our love interest is the one who comes to the island and doesn't know anything. And speaking of the romance, I feel like the romance so far in this book is just kind of slow going. And this isn't a bad thing because the book is giving time for Mabel and Miles to first get to know each other and become friends. And while the romance is slow going, it is like very obvious that the two of them are interested in each other, that they're attracted to each other, and you do see that like from when they first met. Mabel talks about how she like feels pulled towards him. But at the same time, it's not insta love because they're not suddenly head over heels for each other. And they're very much still in the getting to know each other phase and becoming friends. So those are all my thoughts at the moment. I am super excited to continue reading this because there are so many things I need the answers to, because at the moment in the book it seems like the leaders of the island might be keeping some secrets, and also it seems like that the storm that may be coming soon might not be a normal storm. And it might be way more deadly than any other storm that the island and the houses have faced so far. And so my next update will probably be when I finish this, because I have a feeling like I'm just gonna fly through the rest of this. And so for tonight, it is already 10 p.m. so I'll probably be going to bed soon. But I don't have work tomorrow, so I'm going to stay up a little later, and I think I'm going to do some reading of this in the dark so I can check off reading in the dark from my prompt list. Okay, I just need to mention how much Miles is growing on me and how I just love how sarcastic and witty he is. So currently Miles and Mabel are trying to figure out exactly what is going on the island, and they're trying to figure out what secrets the adults are keeping. It's nighttime and it's the weekend, and they are investigating, and Mabel says, "We need to go to the schoolhouse." And Miles retorts, "The schoolhouse? Just where I want to be on a weekend. Will Mr. McLeod be meeting us there for some midnight lessons?" I just love his snark. And then I also love how Mabel gives it right back to him, because she replies, "We only do midnight lessons on weeknights." Hi, so it's now Monday, July 7th, and so it's the third official day of the Summerween readathon, and it did start on Saturday, which I actually did not do a lot of reading on Saturday because I spent a lot of my day finishing editing a video that I put up yesterday. But yesterday, when I was on dinner break at work, I did finish 11 Houses, and this book very much exceeded my expectations. So I'm like super picky when it comes to like horror fantasy, and either horror fantasy is usually either a hit or a miss for me. Like last year I read Your Blood, My Bones, and that one I was super excited for based on the description, but then when I actually read it, it turned out to like not really be for me. But this one was 100% the type of horror fantasy that I really enjoy. This one has a spooky, creepy tone throughout the whole of it, but it's really like the last 100 pages where things really ramp up, and the storm that they've been preparing for the entire book finally happens, and along with the storm comes the dead, and those last like 100 pages were just so thrilling and heart-pounding. I just kept flipping the pages. But in addition to like the spooky, creepy atmosphere, there is also really cute romance in here, and romance is one of the reasons why this book really worked for me and why I liked it as much as I did. So the romance between our main female character Mabel and Miles does fall into the soulmate trope, but at the same time the book does give time for them to get to know each other and for their friendship to develop before their romance starts to happen. Another thing I really liked about this book is like you have those spooky, unsettling moments going on, but there's also heartwarming moments as well that I think gives a good balance to the book. And there are times in the book where the sense of community on the island is very strong and everyone comes together, and there's also strong family bonds in this book, and those two things just made for some very heartwarming moments. This book is a standalone and everything does wrap up very well in the end, and I personally like how it all ended. That is 11 Houses. I'm giving it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it, and I thought the gothic coastal vibes were perfect for Summerween. So next I'm going to start The 13th Child, and I do have work later on today, but I do have some time this morning, so I am going to start this now.